IPP, there were 305 IPPs with a tariff of 1 year or less. There were 1,323 serving a tariff of between 1 and 2 years. IPP sentences could have been passed for and were passed for offences including arson, assault, resisting arrest, robbery, burglary with intent to commit unlawful damage and rioting. On the 17th of January 2007, the BBC reported on the case of Natasha Piccardo, who was remanded into custody on charges later dropped. Whilst in custody, Natasha set fire to herself in her prison cell a number of times while suffering mental health problems. She was convicted in the Crown Court and sentenced to IPP with a 6-month tariff. The Joint Committee on Human Rights in its 2004 report on deaths in custody stated, "The evidence we have gathered suggests that prison actually leads to an acute worsening of mental health problems. By sending people with a history of mental health problems to prison for minor offences, the state is placing them in an environment that has proven to be dangerous to their health and well-being." Between 2006 and 2009, there were 13 IPP self-inflicted deaths. By New Year 2010, there were 115 serving IPPs in secure hospitals under the powers of the Mental Health Act 1983. Over 400 IPPs have served at least 5 times their minimum term. Over 2,800 men and women serving IPP remain detained indefinitely. 90% of these men and women are over tariff. 270 IPPs with a tariff of less than 2 years are 8 years or more over tariff. These IPP men and women have served 20-year prison terms. 18 months from now, in April 2020, these IPPs will be in their 15th year. That's the equivalent of a 30-year prison term for a crime that would have attracted a prison term of no more than 4 years before the implementation of IPP. If the 270 men and women currently detained serving short tariff IPP prison sentences, who are at present between 8 and 11 years over tariff, were sentenced today for the exact same crime, they would be free in no more than 2 years. To put into perspective these shocking injustices, in comparison, the starting point for murder is 15 years, whilst 30-year prison terms are handed down for crimes such as genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Another mind-boggling comparison is that some so-called Islamic State-inspired terrorists who have been convicted for planning atrocities on our land have been handed down sentences of less than 30 years in the same British courts that handed down IPP sentences with small tariffs. More concerning is that even after serving the equivalent of a 25-year prison term, approaching their 14th and 15 years, there is sadly, for some, still no hope of release anytime soon. Men and women serving short tariff IPP sentences for, in the wider spectrum, low-level offences are now serving longer than IRA terrorists convicted of mass murder. There has been no justice for Danny Weatherspoon, given a 13-month tariff at 19 years old, then cut his own throat after 8 years of post-tariff IPP misery and hell. Miraculously, Danny survived. Danny's despair is yet another sad, depressing, alarming miscarriage of justice. The campaign groups and mainstream journalists must catapult these alarming individual miscarriage of justice into the highest profile, most talked about cases in the land. This must happen quickly because otherwise people will die. Self-inflicted IPP death figures are frightening. The manner in which post-terror despair-riddled IPPs are dying is a crime against humanity. Bleeding to death by self-inflicted razor blade wounds or choking to death by hanging from the bars in our cold, draconian Victorian prison cells. An epic, shameful stain on the British justice system. How long is the Justice Secretary prepared to allow this carnage to carry on? Every hour, day, every week, month that passes whereby no legislation is passed, post-tariff IPPs continue to suffer horrific deaths, and the manner which these men and women are slowly dying is similar to something out of a Nazi death camp. Self-harm figures for men and women serving IPP are rising year by year. Currently, between 60 and 70% of IPPs are self-harming. Shirley Noble, Danny Weatherspoon's solicitor, said self-harming has become his way of coping with not having a release date. In 2015, there were 2,500 acts of self-harm by IPPs. There is no justification for the despair suffered by IPPs and their families. Risk-based sentencing is a catastrophic failure.
What we're dealing with here is a total lack of respect for the law.
Shall spearhead the mother of all democratic tsunamis against successive failing governments who fail the people, who fail our children, who threaten our freedom. And the great city of London, a city survived by 2 world wars. A city founded in 50 AD by the Romans. A city who got its name from the Celtic word Londinios, meaning the place of the bold one. The great city of London, where I stand here today. London, a beacon of freedom across all continents of the earth. This city of London, this fine, fine city of London, will burn before the great British people give up our freedom. And their law.